Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining. We're going to give it a couple more minutes here to let some stragglers come on in, and then we'll get started about 3 minutes after the hour. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Again, thank you everybody for joining. My name is Ryan Kegg. I'm the Director of Safety here at Lightspeed Systems, overseeing our alert product. Very lucky to be joined today by Brian Phillips, CIO for Hoover City Schools. And today we're going to be talking about Hoover's approach to student safety and how they're looking at it from a holistic point of view and why they chose Lightspeed to help them along that journey. So what we'll be talking about today is that journey. What brought them to Lightspeed? What factors did they take into account when making those decisions? And specifically focusing on our alert platform, which is our early threat detection notification piece, the benefits and value that Brian and Hoover sees to that product. Talk a little bit briefly about our outreach in Alabama and the footprint that we have there in the state. A very, very quick overview of our portfolio, and then leave some time for questions and answers at the end. If you do have any questions throughout, please pop them over in the chat, and Brian and I will get to them here at the end of the presentation. So all that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Brian, you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing with Lightspeed and why you made that decision?
Yeah. So, hey, good morning, all y'all. We are in year 10 or 11 of having a one-to-one, so we've used several different products over the time. I think the biggest understanding from us happened with a superintendent shift a few years ago. We had used products to filter and content filter things for years, and we needed that on our devices at home for sure because that's what we gave our parents. And when COVID happened, we started back to school on that Monday, and you had kids sitting at home trying to do work at home, and were on their devices for hours every day, and we wanted our parents to feel comfortable from a filtering standpoint of what that looked like. So we knew we needed to have that moving forward. Our big shift really happened on the alert side and what that looked like. Classroom, that piece still works pretty much as any other product we've used. It's been great. It's like every other product. There's bumps and bruises, but I mean, it's the internet. Pages are different, URLs are different, things change. You have to work through those. You have to come up with a policy and a procedure to deal with those. So that's one thing. But I'll go back 6 years ago now. We were using a product to alert us when students did things that were inappropriate or safety concerns, things along those lines. And it really turned into, I would say, an argument between our administration and how I believe things should be and how our superintendent took things. It was really a conversation that we had several times. And we quit using an alert product prior to COVID because our administrators at the school level thought that it was too big brotherish and that we were too involved in taking on too much liability in those situations. And my response always was, we're still liable. We gave them the device. We're telling them how to use it. And we're not telling them, we're not keeping them safe if we don't do these things. Went back and forth. Finally, our superintendent just made a call and said, we're pulling it. So we pulled it for everyone. And then COVID happened. And the mental health pieces started creeping up. I'm from, Gen X, that generation to where, My parents told me to shut up, sit down, and just do what you're supposed to do. And, I didn't have the touchy-feely criticism, but I have a 17-year-old now. I see how that generation, they're different from most of us. And even the younger, the millennial generation is different from most of us. And the mental issues and all the social pieces of it have changed the world we live in. So I agree that's there, and I saw it more and more as COVID went on. So we had a superintendent shift, and at that moment, I went back and said, "Hey, I don't think we're doing things to keep our kids safe, and we're not handling this in a situation to where I feel my kid is safe." And I think that conversation's where we changed things. We started talking about specific kids, and we started talking about specific situations, and we gave instances, and we talked through things that had happened and how that was handled. And I brought our attorneys in and said, most of you have seen, me work with our attorneys when it comes to ALIT and different things like that. We have a really good relationship with them. And I started talking through with them, from the other side of the point of view, something bad does happen. A kid comes in with a gun and does something horrible. And then their attorneys that's defending them in this thing comes back and says, "You didn't do anything when you had the opportunity to." And there were instances where this kid showed you this kid was capable of this and you didn't do anything about it. We started having those conversations, and our attorneys looked at it and they were like, "Oh, maybe you're right here. Maybe, if you do have their history and you do keep up with their history, you know what's going on, you are just as liable whether you know it or not. So maybe we do need to be alerted to when things happen." And that conversation started happening. Then we got into the safety side of it. And, we had several instances over the years prior where administrators had caught kids before things happened and called parents and saved kids' lives. And I think there's some instances we could talk about there that would help that conversation. And then finally, the mental aspects of kids becoming habitual when it comes to things. Kids that are looking for porn over and over and over again. They're trying to get around your filter to get to things. They're, looking for how to build a bomb. All these things like that that show an actual mental issue and an issue that needs to be addressed. And we went from trying to discipline those kids to try to help those kids. And that was the big shift for us. We still have administrators that still try to catch a kid for doing something stupid. But we all know we were kids. We did things that were stupid. But people who guided us and helped us along the way actually made us who we are today. And that's what we're trying to do. You get into why we picked this product. I think it was the conversations I had. I realized that the Lightspeed administration really was there to protect kids, and it was not a money-making thing for them. And we could bring ideas to the table, and they would work to put those in there. I mean, some of the ones that we brought up in the past year that are now parts was, 8 o'clock on a Friday night, a principal gets an alert that a kid can harm themselves. The ability for the principal to click on it and find the parent's phone number and how to contact them right then versus having to go back to a CIS or whatever else. They're working through making things like that happen. Being able to track that a kid's done this 5 times, they've been alerted 5 times to this, and that history right in front of you. That's huge. So that gets to that point of we didn't want to spend a lot of time looking for things. I use the word monitor or alert. I don't use the word tracking. I don't use the word watching, because that's not what we're doing. We're trying to help kids. We're not tracking kids. We're not profiling kids. We're looking for kids that need help when they need it. So we're alerted to those behaviors and we react to those behaviors. And I didn't want to spend time doing it over and over again. So when Ryan talked about the idea of the AI piece doing so much and then a human reviewing every one of those from Lightspeed and then reflecting back to us the ones that they thought were important, and then learning our kids and be able to, say this kid's had this problem over and over again. That gives us time to actually be proactive to things that really matter, not to things that were false positives. I mean, I don't know if any of y'all have paid attention, but it's Suicide Prevention Month. And the past 2 weeks, we've gotten hundreds of alerts from the AI side where kids have looked up the suicide number or suicide prevention number, or how does this work or how does that work, and having a human review that and then come back to us and talk about it's been huge. Ryan, did I miss anything?
No, I think that's spot on. And I think that's a great segue into a little bit more detail about Alert in and of itself, because you had mentioned you've used another product. I may or may not have been involved in that product, for those of you in the room that have known me for long periods of time. But I've been in the student safety space in K-12 for almost 15 years at this point, 12 of which have been spent at an actual competitor to Alert. And one of the things that drew me to Alert is the visibility and the contextual aspect of the product. We're not just looking at keywords and phrases. We're not just, sending everything to you without looking at previous history and all those other things that, lead to the legitimacy of certain pieces of information. And so, Brian, if you don't mind, speak to your experience with Alert so far, comparative to what you've used previously, how we differentiate and what value that's brought to you guys in Hoover.
Yeah, I think you hit it spot on. I mean, the biggest point of it is you've thought through our procedures and how our procedures could work. It helped us develop those. So before, with other products, we could say, this school had these people who were going to get a phone call, and this is how this worked. Being able to build this more custom to us, just by saying I can add a counselor, I can add an SRO, I can add whoever I want to, because I got 13,000 kids. I don't know them all. I don't know how. I don't know a tenth of them. I know a tenth of them's name that comes over and over and over again, but I don't know them. I don't know that something happened at school that day and what that looks like. But the counselor does, the principal does, the assistant principal does, the SRO may. We leave that up to the building to make the decision on who gets that alert. And when they get that alert, the AI piece, we also give them the ability to know who gets a phone call when it really is bad. I think of several instances lately at the district level. I get the phone calls. The chief administrative officer gets the phone call or the alert, and our head SRO, the lieutenant over the SROs get it. We've had instances this year where principal didn't respond, SRO at the building level didn't respond, nurse or counselor or whoever else at the building didn't respond. And we give it about a 20-minute window. If they don't respond, one of us is going to respond in one way or the other. It's great that here in the community, our SRO, lieutenant of SRO, he was a beat cop for years. He has friends that are there, whatever else. He can turn around, pick up the call dispatch and say, hey, I just need a welfare check here. Go make a phone call, go in, talk to this mom. I've called mom. We've had a quick check with them. Either I've called, they've called, somebody on our team has called the mom. But we'll send a car by too, just to have that conversation. We had one specifically in an apartment complex not long ago. Little boy had failed a test that morning. He was a middle schooler. One of those extremely bright kids who had failed the test, didn't handle it well, made some bad decisions, said some things, did some things on his Chromebook, was alerted, got home. That happened around 2 o'clock. He got home, rode the bus home, everything's fine. Called the mom. The mom was upset because he had failed a test. The principal knew that. There was a conversation. So it really wasn't one of those moments where the principal felt good about the kid being there with mom, because the kid had said, my mom's going to kill me, all this other stuff. So to be able to turn around and call our SRO and say, hey, send a car by there just to have a conversation. And then when the officer actually spoke to the mom, there was a conversation. They just realized the mom was upset too. And it just gave everybody a peace of mind on a Friday afternoon versus, the poor principal worrying about the poor kid all weekend if mom's going to pick him up. Us from an administrative point of view worried that the liability of that if mom did something or if the kid did something. It gave the way we built our procedure gave us a peace of mind. And that's how it worked for us. The benefits are huge. The peace of mind's the fact that I know that I'm in a tree hunting, Terry's at a ball game, the head SRO's doing something, and you guys would still call or dispatch if they have to and make a phone call and, send someone there because you know it's going to work that way. That's a huge benefit because now I don't feel like I have to have my phone with me 24 hours a day. I don't have to be as paranoid. From the superintendent, I haven't talked much to our new superintendent. He's only been in for 8 days at this point. I haven't talked to them about this, but our old superintendent, to have his peace of mind to know that someone's looking out for our kids 24 hours a day. We're doing everything possible we can to keep our kids safe. And we can go back to our parents and say, look, we care about your kid as much. I have a kid here. I have a senior. And to be able to say that I'm doing everything I can for him and his friends, that's a huge piece for me.
I think one of the things that there's a couple of things that drew me to Lightspeed. Having known about them for a long time, being in the spaces that I've been in for, like I said, 15 years at this point, is the totality that we have when we take this approach to student safety, right? It's not just a keyword or phrase. Because of the filter in place, because of digital insights in classroom, we have all these other data points now that we're able to bring to the table and weed through a lot of that noise. It's not, we're not sending you guys on wild goose chases every time a kid says I'm going to KMS, because that's the new LOL nowadays, right? Is the kid really going to hurt himself, or is he mad because his friend forgot to bring a sweatshirt to school and he's cold? And so have you seen a difference in terms of the volume that you were getting with the previous product that you had in place comparative to what we're bringing? And what does the legitimacy look like of those events that we're bringing to light?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the AI piece. And as that works, I'll tell you one quick story that made me realize that it still happens, but not as often. I think a lot of it still is because it's AI based. A lot of it's based off the kid as well. I don't know that for a fact, but I'll give you for instance. One day I'm in a meeting. It's me. It's all the chiefs. The other three chief officers and the superintendent, and we're in a pretty heated meeting. And I got an alert and looked down, and I was like, "What's this kid talking about?" And then I started looking at it. It's my kid. It's my son. So I'm like, "What the heck?" So to your point of the sweatshirt, he's in Scholars Bowl, and they were doing a mock tournament, blah blah blah, and we're playing, and he answered something stupid, and it was just in his mind, he had a brain fart, said something stupid, and realized that, well, the next thing he typed was, I'm an idiot, I should KMS. And he was just, basically playing with his buddies by chat, just talking about it. I shouldn't have said that type deal. But he gets flagged. And it happens from time to time. It's not, it's not perfect. But I also think it's an AI thing. And he had never done anything else wrong before. But you still caught it. You see what I'm saying? The one time he said something stupid, you caught it. And then, of course, I'm sending him a text message. Hey, dummy, what are you doing? What does that look like? And he explains it to me. And then, the chief operating officer sitting across from me is like, hey, do I need to make this phone call? I'm like, no, it's fine. Then the principal calls, hey, do I need to go up and talk with your son? No, he's fine. But to have the fact that even, a kid who makes straight A's, who is doing all the right things, to still be alerted for that was a huge plus for me. I do think it's a good balance. There still are enough instances that aren't exactly true, like Harrison's, but there overwhelmingly are instances that we need to look at most of the time. I do not think it's as many false positives. I will say things like Suicide Prevention Month was a big deal. We had, last year there was a case where a kid in Selma died of a fentanyl thing. Took a drug, thought it was something else, ended up being fentanyl, and the kid died. That week, anytime anybody typed anything, we got alerted. And I think it was probably because more kids were searching because it was in the news here, but I also think it was because it was needed. And I think I don't know how the AI piece works. I had this conversation with y'all, not you specifically, but people on your team. I kind of wish we had control of our AI bot, and I know we couldn't do that because of size and scalability and all that thing. But if I could go in on weeks that I know that suicide prevention's big and say, hey, turn this down a little bit on suicide. Let me back this off a little bit. Or, if we had a death in the community, to be able to tweak that a little bit as an AI piece and say, look for this more, look for this less. I think that would be a plus. But again, I know what that looks like from a scalability. I mean, we don't have enough databases for everybody to do that. But I do think it works. It works better than others that I've used. I do think the AI piece is going to make it smarter. And then at that point, to have someone, I have 3 of your people who are the monitors in my phone as John Lightspeed. So when I see that phone call come from, it's just not Austin, Texas anymore. I know it's one of those people calling who are filtering, who are looking to pay attention to this, and I know that I need to pick it up. So I think that's a huge plus.
Yeah, and there is a new feature now that allows you to adjust the sensitivity and create thresholds within each individual category. So, and it's a week old. So now you can say in self-harm, I want all levels of concern. In bullying, I only want high levels. So we have new thresholds within each category now that allows you to customize it even further, specific to the resources that you have at your disposal and the types of information that you want to learn about. And I think that's a good time or a good segue too to talk about the human review team, because we're not unique in the respect that we have one, but we are unique in the perspective that we've taken and how we've built that team out. Other products in the market have, large teams that quite frankly, everyone could have worked at the Gap last week, right? Some have quotas that they have to hit on an hourly basis. They're hourly contracted employees. If they miss their quota, they're let go when someone new is brought in. We've approached it very differently. Everybody on our team comes from a background of doing, jobs of service previously. So, that John that you mentioned could have been one of our former law enforcement officers that have over 20 years of experience. We have former Secret Service officers. We have educators who have left the classroom but still wanted to be involved, mental health professionals, and people of those types of backgrounds. And we've built our team in that capacity very purposefully because nothing's going to surprise them. They've dealt with these situations before. They know how to make quick and unbiased decisions in those time-sensitive situations. But we also train them every month by outside organizations like the FBI, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, Safe and Sound Schools, Internet Crimes Against Children task forces, and things of that nature. And we train them so frequently. Things are changing so frequently, right? There's a new social media trend out every week. You mentioned the unfortunate situation in Selma where the student passed away from a fentanyl overdose. Well, there's a new word to describe fentanyl that pops up every day somewhere. Right. And something I recently learned that was interesting to me, an FBI agent told me this, in 94% of writings and research done on school shootings by the offender, the word rainbow is prevalent. So we train our team, and I don't know what that means, he wouldn't tell me, but that's what we train our team to do, is look for those little nuanced type words and phrases that to the untrained eye look perfectly harmless, but in actuality have ill intention or ulterior motive associated with them. So all of that being taken into account, it just makes them that much more effective at their jobs, which in turn, going back to the slide previously, it allows them to take the approach that you take, and a much more proactive approach as opposed to reactive. Because like I said before, we have all of the web activity. We have the searches the kids are performing, the YouTube videos that they're watching. If you guys at your school districts allow them to listen to music on the devices, we know what music they're listening to. If they have social media access on your devices, we see that as well. And in addition, the domain integrations into Google and Office 365 provide coverage off that device. And so if they're logged in at home, when they have more time to think about things, or, they're having issues at home and, kids can't cope nowadays. That's one thing that all of our kids are struggling with. It's tough to be a kid now. But the lack of coping mechanisms are a real thing. My wife is a high school counselor, and it's something we talk about pertaining to our children, is trying to teach our kids ways to deal with issues and come out the other side stronger for them. And so all of those different components just allow for a more proactive approach, like I said, to tie this up in a bow and weed through the noise and create a sense of urgency with what we're bringing to light. We don't want to desensitize people to the point where here's another alert from Lightspeed. We'll look at it tomorrow. That's where we run into issues. We want our districts and our clients to know if an email comes through for our human review team, if your caller ID says Lightspeed Systems on it, there's a reason for that. And there needs to be a little bit of a sense of urgency in those responses. So let's move on here. And, I think based on my experience, a lot of people are hesitant to move forward with a product like this because of the unknown, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so, with Brian's blessing, I included this information here. This is from January 1st, 2023. And, with 13,600 students into our environment, this is a volume of actionable items that we've brought to their attention. And I'm sure, Brian, you can speak in a little bit more detail about what hasn't been incredibly actionable, but, what you're thankful that we've been able to send forward.
Yeah, I mean, I can think of three off the top of my head that one of them, the kid was going to do harm to another kid, and we stopped that. Two other ones were the kid was going to harm themselves 100%. I mean, it was, once you go back and look through it and look at what happened and what was said, they were going to harm themselves. And we had one where a parent was harming a kid, and we found out that way. Of those 11, that's 4 that I can think of. There probably were 3 or 4 more that were iffy. We can't prove one way or the other, but I think the kid probably was asking for help in a way. I will tell you that's something new that has started in the past couple of months, is because kids know that we're looking at things when they flag. That's almost a way of asking for help without asking for help. And that's the new thing we've noticed with a couple of kids, which is a good thing. I mean, for them to have a way to reach out and say something, I think that's a big thing. The other thing is the false positives there, where we got kids that are just butt heads that type something to see if we're watching or to cause a problem. It's the same kid that does something stupid in class just to get that attention. They just want attention, and that's the only attention they can get, so they do that. But I mean, it's still, kids need attention for other reasons. I'm thankful. And one of the conversations that I had early on with our past superintendent was, if this saves one kid, it's worth every dime we spend. And I think everybody could agree to that. Because if you were that parent, Dr. Fowler was in Madison years ago when he was the superintendent when another kid shot another kid in the head in the hallway, and the SRO was 15 feet away. So you're doing everything you can possibly do at that point to keep a kid safe, and the kid still did it. And to be able to have that conversation with him and say, hey, look, was there things before the fact that probably could have helped? And, he said, I really don't know. He wasn't aware. But for us to find things where a kid, typed, how do you build a bomb? What type gun does this? Or, the big one here lately is, how do I get to the dark web? That's one I've seen a few times lately. How do I get around filters? How do I get around get to a proxy? Things like that. Those may not be actionable items right away. But if you see those come up multiple times, you see a pattern begin, and then you start looking at the real mental health of the kid. So if you look at those 11 imminent threat, 2 of them probably were the first time that ever happened. That's a guess. I would say 2 or 3. But the other 8, 9, 10 of them, the kid had prior things, so they were on someone's radar. It's the 2 that didn't, that end up being actionable, that we have to worry about. I'm back to the counselor, everybody else. There's been instances where, especially in middle school, a bullying case where the counselor knew. As soon as the kid's name popped up, they knew what happened. And they were able to either call them from the classroom into their room and talk to them, call them at home and have a conversation. It just builds, we're all trying to build a whole kid, a complete kid. It just helps with those things. And, 202 threats sounds like a lot, but when you spread it out above 13,600 kids, it's not really that many now. It's 13,100 kids now. So I'm gonna need to cut that license back and save a couple of pennies. But to have that peace of mind is huge.
And there's something you touched on that I wanted to add a little bit more color to, because I think, people from our generation take it for granted a little bit, is the breadcrumb conversation. Kids, there's signs that kids are struggling, and, you know, kids coming up now, they're not comfortable having face-to-face conversations with people. They're much more, at ease communicating electronically, whether it's via email or opening up a Google Doc and using it like an AOL Instant Messenger type situation, or those searches that they're performing that, once you put those breadcrumbs together and paint that picture, it's clear that this student's struggling. And that's one of the big reasons I came to Lightspeed from what I did previously, is being able to put those puzzle pieces together and have all of this additional data and these touch points that you can see and use to do that. And I'm glad that you're seeing that and are seeing the value in the product and being able to get in front of these kids a little bit more quickly.
To that point, we have a kid who, I'm not giving an exact example, but you have a kid who is coming in for other reasons. They're acting up in class, or they found out that a parent died, or whatever, something happened to bring this kid up on the radar. And to be able to go back at that point and say, okay, well, y'all, here's everything this kid's done over the past month. Is there anything in here that ties to what you're seeing, the other behavior? Is there anything here that can help you with that other behavior? Is there anything here that led to that other behavior? You got, even a PST meeting, a kid's coming in, they're talking, you're talking about retaining this kid because they can't read. Well, what's the kid doing on that Chromebook? What does that look like? What are they doing when they get home? What's happening when they're home? Our kids use the same password for everything, and it's all Google related. But, you start looking at how's that device being used at home when it's that kid. I had a kid a few months ago that got alerted like at 2 a.m. And I'm like, what the heck? Why is this kid trying to get a dating site at 2 a.m.? Well, once we started looking, it wasn't the kid, it was the mom, who is a single mom, and she was looking at trying to find it at 2 a.m. But you look at it before that instance because you're trying to figure out what was happening. And she's trying to pay her bills. She's trying to, get their phone turned back on, things like that. And she's using our device to do those things. So you start looking at it as a whole kid. What is that kid actually living with at home? What does that look like? It ends up being a big deal.
Cool. Well, let's segue now into just our footprint in the state of Alabama. It's growing rapidly. We're up to 44 school districts using some aspect of our portfolio. I know you in Hoover, you're using our filter environment, you're using our classroom management tool, you're using Alert, and also our digital insight platform. And so, the mission of Lightspeed is to protect as many kids as we can in as many ways as possible. You see the tagline at the bottom of the slide: safety, security, and equity at the speed of light. We got to play off the name a little bit, but making sure that kids have equitable access to learn in the same ways, regardless of their socioeconomic background, their racial environment, their orientation, whatever the case may be. And so I'm glad to see, the state of Alabama is near and dear to my heart. I've been working with you folks down there for the better part of 18 years now. And to be a part of a company that's making a difference in Alabama means the world. So at this point, I want to just briefly touch on, the components of our portfolio. I'm not going to do a demo or anything like that for the sake of time. And then we'll make sure you have some contact information if you want to learn a little bit more, and introduce our Alabama rep here at the end. But there are 5 main components of our service offerings to school districts. We only work within K-12. At this point, we've been around since 1997 as a content filter. By the number of students we serve in revenue, we are the largest content filter in the market. At this point, we're in 41 countries around the world, and on a daily basis are protecting up to 28 million kids. As that product grew in success and popularity, the other products were developed. So classroom management was next, then came Alert, mobile device management, and lastly, digital insight. Digital insight, we acquired a company called Catch On back in January of 2022. Did some work to it, and now it's been marketed as Digital Insight, which is basically catch on steroids. It's an analytical platform that provides districts insight into the applications that are being used throughout the district, both on and off-prem. The amount they're being used relative to what you've spent on them. And I think another really good thing about that platform is it tracks the privacy of your student data. Any changes made to privacy policies with the applications being used, whether they're both free or paid, are tracked. Any changes made are highlighted so you can very quickly and easily see those differences. You're not having to keep up on privacy policies and do that research. And another aspect of that we just recently released is our digital equity platform that's able to gather information on ISPs at home, making sure that kids have equitable internet access and can learn in the same way that other kids are able to. So, those 5 main components of our portfolio, make up Lightspeed Systems and are able to offer districts solutions to cover the whole kid, as Brian mentioned, from when they're at school on your network, on your devices, or when they're off school on home hours and are bored and have too much time to kill. So I'm going to stop here for a moment and see if you guys have any questions. Please pop them in the chat and we can answer them. If not, then we can wrap up here, but I'll give you guys a moment to pop anything in there. Brian, there's a question that came in alluding to cost, and I'm not going to get into specifics, but one thing I will talk about, because you mentioned it before, is how one of the things you liked about Alert and Lightspeed, it's not a money grab, right? And one thing that drew me to Lightspeed is from our Alert platform, we really don't make much money off that. The money that we do make goes to pay our human review team. Brian Thomas, our CEO, made a conscious decision to offer this product to school districts with very little profit because of the information we were gathering, specifically after the Parkland shooting. We had all this information within our filter environment, but we didn't have the human review aspect. We didn't have an easy way to present that information to school districts. That's where Alert was born from. And, being able to offer a solution like this relatively, inexpensively comparative to some of the other products in the market, just another tool in the tool belt to help to get in front of some of these issues that we're having. So I did want to hit on that. From a cost perspective, Mike Fallon is our Alabama rep. He's on today's presentation, does not have the ability to speak. We keep him locked up as much as possible. But, this next slide here that I'll leave up has my contact information. It has Brian's. You guys all know how to get in touch with him at this point, I'm sure. But Mike's information is in here as well. So please feel free to reach out. I'm sure Mike will follow up with you all just as a thank you, and so you have his direct contact information after this. But we're going to go ahead. Go ahead, Brian.
Let me talk to the cost thing real quick from my point of view.
Sure.
It is expensive to do this, but again, try to put somebody on staff to do this full time and cover it 24 hours a day. You're not going to be able to do that. The digital insight piece, I fought over and over and over again because I thought the analytics were something that I could pull and do myself. But once I put it in place, the end of ESSER money's here. And to be able to go to, I'm sure most of you are just like me, schools have bought junk on top of junk on top of junk. It literally took me going back and saying, these 2 products are a waste of time and money. We're not using them to full fidelity to pay for my entire Lightspeed suite, not just digital insights, but to pay for everything. So if you go through and you look at what's actually there using the insight tool, you can literally say, I'm going to use a dumb example, but Reader Rabbit was not being used to fidelity, and you're paying $7 a kid for the entire district. Turn around and use that money to pay for a product like this. It really is cost effective. And to give you the peace of mind, not having to have a staff member do this all the time, and it just do the work for you, it's huge.
Awesome. Great. Well, everybody, thank you very much for your time today. Hope you learned something, about Lightspeed, but also how Brian's going about what they're doing, how they're going about protecting their kids in Hoover. All school districts have the same issues. They're just magnified. And the more you guys can work together to come up with solutions, the better off all our kids will be. So thank you for everything that you're doing to protect your kids. And please let us know if we can help in any way. With that point, have a great rest of your week. Brian, thank you for your time today. Appreciate your partnership and your friendship. And we'll see you all down the road. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, man.